Hello, and welcome to Getting the Best Results podcast, where each week we talk about shortcuts and techniques that will help you get the best results in life and business. It's all about learning a new method or approach, or possibly an insight or an idea that will contribute to your life in a positive way. I'm your host, Cheryl Jones. I'm an author, facilitator, and professional speaker. My focus is on helping individuals and small businesses break through their common thinking to create bigger, bolder, and better results. You can learn more about me at simplythebestresults.com, where you will also find lots of resources to help you break through. Now, let's get on with this week's show. Earlier you mentioned something about going to networking events, and I want to do air quotes around networking events, things that are, geared that way. We talked about people who immediately try to sell you on their product or service. What are other things that just drive you crazy so that we know what not to do?
Well, that's a good question. And I think some of the things that I find not good practices are actually promoted as good practices. So
oh, no kidding.
It's easy to be confused. For example, I was at an event a week or so ago, and you sat at your table for lunch, and before the speaker started, we had a little table networking, and then everybody passed their cards around. And I'll be honest, when I got home, there were probably 6 or 7 people at my table. I kept 2 of the cards and I threw the rest away. And that sounds so harsh and so cruel. 2 people I really resonated with. I would do business with them. I want to I want to see them again. I want to have coffee and find out more about their business and how I can support them. The others seemed very transactional. They were there to sell. They didn't share much about themselves personally. I'll probably see them again. I'll give them another chance. I try not to be mean or icky to anybody. It's always be gracious. But I don't keep everybody's business cards. I can't. So so the practice of just whipping out a card, or the other one that's related to that is someone who walks over to your table and deals out their business cards like it's a blackjack table or a poker game or a card game of hearts or euchre or something. They're dealing out the cards. I really don't like that because you haven't connected first. That's imagine, let's say you're single and you're at a nice little happy hour and some guy comes over to you and hands you his phone number. You don't know his name yet. You don't know what he does. You know anything, and he's already whipping out the phone number. That's sort of the same sort of ick factor in my book. So that's one thing.
Yeah, total ick.
I think we mentioned a little bit about we wanted to go into, how do you meet people? You walk into this room, you don't know anybody. Well, a couple of things. Let's go back to the warm-up to networking. I think it's really important to prepare yourself in advance, get yourself psyched up, play your favorite music, do your hair, do your makeup, for us women. Guys, get yourself tidied up, put on the outfit that makes you feel confident, and come up with, and if you have to write them on a 3x5 card, that's absolutely fine. Come up with some conversation starting questions, and they can be easy ones like, so what do you do, or what brought you here, or is this your first time at one of these events? Do you know the speaker? Have you heard anything about him or her? You can use the context of the event to start conversations. And then people say, well, how do you even start the conversation? Walk up to someone who's standing by themselves and extend your hand in a friendly way, not like a karate chop or anything like that. In a nice, friendly way, smile and say, hi, I'm Patti. How are you? Is this your first time at one of these events? Do you know anybody else here? Just start somewhere. A conversation has to start somewhere, and it's actually our social duty to be proactive. According to business etiquette, you don't just go to an event and wait for someone to come up to you. It's your duty to start introducing yourself. So,
could you imagine us all standing around waiting for each other and nobody moving? What's the point?
That's my definition of, one of my definitions of hell would be everyone standing around and nobody talking at all. Yeah, what's going on? Yeah.
One of the best opening lines, typically an opening line is reserved for, bars and whatnot, but this was a professional association, and this was one of the best lines. And I don't know that I have it exactly right in my memory because it was a couple of years ago. But I walked up to this gentleman who was obviously didn't know anybody in the room, and I knew most of the people, or a lot of the people in the room. And so I thought, well, I'll go meet him because I don't know who he is. So let's find out who he is. So I walked up to him and introduced myself and welcomed him because I was part of the group, and he said to me, well, what's something you're working on or you're excited about? It was something like that that's going, or something you're excited about in your life. And I went, oh my gosh. And it like triggered like 6 things in my thoughts. And all of a sudden, like I noticed my own energy change. And I got excited about telling him about it. And then we were all commanded to sit down for lunch kind of deal, so the program could begin. And so I never got to return the favor, if you will, and say, what's new and cool and exciting in your life, And I thought, wow, that just really flips a switch in people's brains instead of, what do you do,
Right.
Which I never have a good answer for, but.
That was very generous of him to listen to you and to see how excited you were. And, of course, next time you can return the favor and say, hey, Bill or Jeff or whatever his name is, last time you were so generous to me. I want to hear about what you're working on now. What can I do to help you? What can I do to, is there anything I can do? First of all, what are you working on? And can I do anything to make that even a better experience? So, it's sort of when you see him next time, that's how you can pay him back. But I love that question. I love, what are you working on? What's lighting you up these days? And here's the other thing. When someone is generous enough to ask you a question like that, have an answer. And you said you had to kind of like come up with something, you had to think about it for a minute, but there's nothing more frustrating than going up and trying to strike up a conversation with someone and they're giving you yes and no answers, or they're, rolling their eyes or going, oh, it's just same old, or hey, yeah. Good. And then that gives you nothing to work with. So catch yourself if you're not prepared to talk about what's going on in your life. That's something to work on. That's some homework or pre-work, I would say. And don't give 1- and 2-word answers or say something that's just trite and pithy and doesn't take the conversation anywhere, because it's your duty too to keep it going back and forth.
Right.
My whole next book is about this. You should see my bulletin board. It's full of so many different threads and little tidbits and pieces on what it really takes to get a good conversation going. And it's complicated, but it's easy. And we all have a responsibility to prepare ourselves for conversation and for connection.
Well, yeah. Especially if we want to get anything out of it. I mean, otherwise, if we're not there to get something out of it, why be there? And I don't mean to sound all about me or whatever, but you're putting time, money, and effort into being at this event. So why not come prepared to connect? And then you'll have a much better reward from it. You'll get the best results instead of no results. Which I'm going to throw you. Go ahead.
Oh, can I just give you one quick example?
Absolutely.
I went to about a month ago, and there's a woman that came to it. It was her first time. She was absolutely lovely. She was dressed well. She was, she didn't resist talking to anybody. She didn't stand off in a corner. Someone was generous enough to be bringing her around, introducing her to people. But I will say, she wasn't prepared to talk about what she did. She kind of poo-pooed her own job. She did mention something about something her dad did that was something that's kind of an iconic thing here in Austin, and that was what was interesting, which is kind of sad because it's like I don't want to just remember someone just because of what their dad did. But I felt like she showed up, walked in the room, and she was mostly prepared, but not really to talk about herself. And it was almost like she expected us to be we were the welcoming committee, but I would have liked to seen a little more effort on her part to participate in the conversation, and bring something cool. Like, tell us more about why you want to be networking right now. Tell us more about what makes your business interesting. Why do you love your job? And I didn't feel like she was ready to answer those questions. And that's part of it is it's practice. There's always practice on how to be. You don't have to be, the bon vivant that's the life of the party when they walk in the room, but can you keep a conversation going?
Yes, I agree with you completely. Yeah, and if you stick to those superficial questions and those superficial answers, you're never going to connect. It's just skimming across the surface. You're never going deep in,
Yeah, you've got to be willing to share. You've got to be. A blog I just did was about my dog. She's a retriever. She's part retriever, part poodle, and so she brings something to everybody who walks in the door, and you included because you've been a visitor at my home. And I talked about how she's a great networker because she always brings something, and bringing something can mean, I read something really cool this morning I want to share with you, or like you had those little cards that had the quotes on them, or a compliment, or little tidbit of news from the industry that, I read this morning that, 35% of us, it's like, that gives some people to talk about. Bring something to the party.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yes, I know exactly. I can think of somebody that's in my immediate circle that I don't really enjoy spending time with her because it's the conversation's so shallow, and I'm just like, I know. It's like, and it's unfortunate. I want to talk. I want to have deep, rich conversations and really know people. I don't need to know your personal business. I mean, what your fears are necessarily or anything like that. It's just let's have a conversation, kind of thing.
Well,
I want to throw you.
Go ahead.
Oh, can I throw you a sidebar or a side? What is it called? One of those balls that comes sideways in baseball.
A curveball. Yes, throw
That's
me a
it.
curveball.
That's it. Thank you.
I'm ready.
So my curveball is speed networking events. Okay, so the ones that I've been to, they're not my favorite thing. I know you are. The ones that I've been to, you're like 2 minutes a piece or something, and you move from chair to chair to chair or whatever, or you're standing and you move, the internal circle moves and the external circle stays the same. And I'm going to one tomorrow night. So I'm like, okay, how can I get the most value out of that in exchange? And I'm thinking I could use that question about what's new what's new and exciting in your world that you're thrilled about, or I don't know. How can I get the best value? Do you have any insights?
Well, I think given the work you do, you could actually be the most interesting person at the party based on what you ask. Because your work involves, it's deep work. It's not like you accessorize people with jewelry and, things like, it's like you get into some deep stuff. So come up with a question, and it could be something about, I want to hear about something that energizes you, or I want to hear what energizes you and what drains you.
Perfect.
And watch people go, whoa. And then hopefully they'll ask you the same question. So you have to be ready and efficient with the time. I don't know how much time you each have with each other. And I'm going to back up and say, speed networking is not my favorite, but what it does is it serves a purpose in that it forces everybody to mingle, however it's set up. It forces everybody to meet everybody in the room. You get a little taste. It's like a sampler platter. And you'll be able to tell, because you're very intuitive like I am, I think, how many people do you think will be there?
Well, the notice said bring 80 business cards.
Wow.
So I don't think there'll be 80 people there, but I think there'll probably be the last time I went to one of these, it wasn't a speed networking. It was just a kind of a networking thing, and they had exhibits and stuff like that. So I bet there were probably 60 people there easily.
Yeah, and maybe they'll break you up into smaller groups. But the point is, that's a lot of people for a person to take in, and I would hope that the organizers would know that. So that's something, and that'll probably be overwhelming for an introvert. But again, the usefulness of speed networking is that you'll get to meet a number of people, and I think for me, it would be a win if I walked away thinking, man, I met 3 people tonight that I'd like to get to know better. I'm going to find out what groups they hang out with so I can see them again, or I'm going to try to put them on my coffee calendar. And granted, I only do like 1 or 2 coffees a week max because I'm really busy. But it can be really useful. It's just, that's not the only networking to do. That's why it starts to get transactional again. If you're only about meeting lots and lots and lots of new people and finding lots and lots of new prospects, that becomes a marketing and sales, strategy, and not networking and connection strategy.
Totally different
so good luck
thing. Yeah. Well,
I
can
hear what
see
that
how
turns out to be.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I think what it will do for me is, because I've been around this group a couple times now, I don't know a lot of people, but I've been around and sat at different tables, and I don't have a lot of friends in this group, kind of thing, so I don't sit with my people. What's going to happen is I'm probably going to identify people I want to know better. And I'm thinking a strategy might be to put, if there's a business card exchange, to make sure that I put some note on their card that tells me one word or something that triggers it for me, who that person was and why I want to continue to be in relationship with them. Yeah.
Obviously where you met them and when, the date. That's a good practice, to everybody listening. Right. When you get a business card, put a little note. If you want to do it when you get home, fine. Put a little note on what meeting or event you met them at and when you met them. It's kind of fun to look back and go, wow, I've known this person 10 years, and I met them at, I need to go back to that meeting. You'll start to see patterns on what groups are useful. But I like your strategy, and I know you're big on setting intentions, and I think anytime we go to a big networking event or speed networking or whatever, to have some sort of intention on, wow, I intend to have fun. I intend to enjoy myself. I intend to meet some interesting people. I intend to figure out who should be designing my website. Whatever issues and challenges or obstacles you're dealing with, you might say, I intend to find somebody who can give me some advice on this topic. And if you just run that through your mind, writing it down is even better. But if you can run that through your mind, it's amazing what shows up.
That's a great idea.
And I need to get back into the practice of that and not just think, I have to go to this thing on the calendar. I have to get back into I have to reread my own book. It's a practice. It's like yoga. It's like running. It's like, anything that you do that you should be doing every day or very regularly. Networking and conversing and socializing and getting something interesting and giving is a practice.
Absolutely. And it can fill you up. You know what I mean? You fill your heart up when you make these rich, good connections. It can also be draining if it's all superficial, but that's really up to you,
It is. And I definitely have known people that have said, I don't get anything out of that event. And it's like, well, you showed up late. You disrupted the whole meeting because you were late. You missed the networking part. You left early, so you missed any follow-up. I can see why you thought it was useless and I write about that in my book. I can see why you thought that was useless because you weren't there long enough to even give it a chance. Or you showed up and you didn't know what you wanted, or you didn't have anything to contribute. It's definitely up to you. Yeah,
definitely. Sure. I agree completely. Well, I've got a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
Of course.
And then we'll kind of wrap things up a bit. But so as I was planning and thinking about this, I've thought, okay, what are some of 2 or 3 things that maybe we need to be aware of, know, and do? And know and do might be kind of similar. What do we need to keep in mind, like be aware of and know and do? And
be aware of that no matter who you're meeting. I know that as humans, we do tend to judge people by, first impressions. That's just how we're wired. We can't help it. But we have to always remember we don't know who that person the person standing across the room that we're looking at and making little judgments, because that's what we do. We don't know who they know. We don't know what they know.
Right.
I have many times walked into a room full of people, immediately got overwhelmed, but when looked off to the side and there was someone standing by themselves looking as terrified as I was, and believe it or not, I'm the expert, but I still get a little nervous walking into a room full of people I don't know, went over and struck up a conversation with that person, and it's amazing. I've been blown away, surprised at who I was talking to.
Wow.
One time I was talking to a guy that is an entrepreneur, but when Sandra Bullock's in town here in Austin, he does her hair. So that was really fun.
Oh, how cool is that?
Fun to talk to him. I've talked to other authors who tend to be a little introverted. It's just been amazing. So don't judge. Don't know who that person knows. So that's
right.
To be aware of. Know and do. Remember the opportunities are everywhere. Be gracious and kind to people. And, it's work. It is work. It's not, it can be fun. It depends on how you look at it. But again, it requires practice. It requires some skill, some preparation, and you will get out of it what you put into it. I mean, and that's just the rule. That's
Absolutely.
just the rule. Yeah.
Well, and then, you're going to attract people to you that have a similar energy probably, who look nice, who aren't wearing, jeans are very much in now and things like that, but wrinkled shirts are not so much in, when you look like you just pulled it out of the dryer and, and it's a full, 100% cotton, that produces an image in your mind about that person doesn't really care about themselves. Would they be a good person to connect with,
That really troubles me because I've known some really great people who are super talented, super successful, and they come to events looking pretty rumpled, and it's like, and I don't know if that's like a shield that protects them. I don't know why they do it.
Interesting insight.
I don't know what that's all about, but I see it pretty regularly. I guess I will also say, related to that people are tribal, and we're going to initially be attracted to people that are like us, which is great. But I also think, do something a little different and go talk to someone who's not just like you. Right. And see if you can expand your world a little bit by listening to, where are you from? Oh, I grew up in Israel, or I grew up in Argentina or Peru. I have a friend in my spin class. She's from Peru, and I love talking to her. She's really interesting. And I just thought she was like a stay-at-home mom. No, she's a very successful financial planner that manages a lot of money. Wow. And her approach to life is different. The way they celebrated the holidays is way over the top, hilarious and fun. It's fun to talk to her. And it gets me out of my typical, looking for people that look and sound just like me and are the same age and all that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and these, the things that we're talking about apply to every age. It doesn't matter where you are in your business lifespan, or if you're just coming out of college or whatever. We all need to be building relationships, and that's that's the bottom line of everything you talk about, And we have to add some variety. We have to add, I talk about adding diversity to your network, and that doesn't mean racial, cultural. It does, but it also means have friends that are older than you, have friends that are younger than you. If you're a creative person, get to know some techie people. If you're a communicator, get to know some financial people. Add diversity, because there are studies about the fact that the people who have the most diverse networks are the most successful people, because you're getting to know people who aren't just like you, and that gives you it gives you a long range, big picture view of the world. You can understand when someone talks about a person who is in their 40s and does this and does that. You can say, oh yeah, I have a friend that's, oh yes, I understand that, because it's familiar to you. You've made it your business to make other people's worlds familiar to you. And it doesn't feel like a foreign language, No. My youngest brother is in the tech world, and he works for a large computer company. And sometimes the language he's using, I'm like, what? So about hour 2, I'm starting to catch up, not because he's younger. It's not that, I guess I forget which generation he falls into, maybe Gen X or whatever, but it's not about that. What it's about is he's using language that's more tech oriented, and I don't come from a tech environment, but by talking with him, I start understanding it, and I start becoming familiar with it in a way that is really helpful when I talk to anybody else that's in a similar industry, Yeah. And so I really enjoy it, my visits with him, I read something in doing some of the research for my book, my conversation book. I read something that, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but he says he wakes up every morning and he says to himself, one of his mantras is,
what am I prepared to be wrong about today?
Oh.
And what am I prepared to learn today? And that's just one of his, waking up.
Yeah.
And, he says it leads to some of the most interesting conversations. It makes him less judgmental. It makes him more open.
Oh, awesome.
And I can tell you, I don't know his name, but I can tell you he's someone who's very brilliant, very successful. So apparently it works. And I love the bit about what am I prepared to be wrong about? Ouch.
I know.
Yeah. But
some of us are so attached. Yeah.
I know.
Oh,
yeah.
We're so attached to our beliefs sometimes, yes, that we can't make room for another point of view. Well, tell me, what's next for you? What are you focusing on? What are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited about a couple of things. I'm getting very clear that my favorite speaking engagements are doing workshops with organizations, whether it's an association or a corporate workshop, and also doing interactive presentations at leadership conferences and women and diversity leadership conferences. Those are my favorite spots right now. I always have a great time when I work on those. The other thing I'm working on, I think I mentioned it a couple of times, is my next book, which is on conversation and connection. And I haven't decided yet if it's going to be the sequel or the prequel to The Intentional Networker. Maybe it's both.
Maybe.
That is just taking me down all these delicious rabbit holes. I'm learning so much about, for example, why is listening harder than talking? And it has to do with our brains, and it has to do with, a lot of different things. But I'm learning so many things that I have to put the brakes on. Okay, Patty, you can't go down that rabbit hole 20 miles. You can mention it and give a few tidbits, but yeah, so maybe there's several books here. But anyway, those are the things that are lighting me up. I also have a new website that's going to be launching here pretty soon. Very excited about that. Yeah, so it's going to be a whole new decade, new projects.
I love that. And it's so fresh and new and, expansive. There's so many really cool things on the horizon for you. I'm just really thrilled for you. I can't wait to watch it unfold. Yeah, absolutely.
Me too. I have no idea. Where this is taking me, but it's so much fun right now.
Isn't it? That's great. Yeah. Well, if our listeners would like to get in touch with you, how can they reach you? Obviously at www.intentionalnetworker.com, but where else?
Yes, intentionalnetworker.com. Or I'm open to people emailing me, Patti with an I, Patti at intentionalnetworker.com. And I will just say sometimes when you're typing the word intentional, sometimes it'll spell check and make it international. So make sure it's intentional networker. The international networker is a whole I'm sure there's one out there, but it's not me. So intentionalnetworker.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Patti with an I, DeNucci, DEN as in Nancy, UCCI. So I'm open to LinkedIn conversations. So yeah, that's how people can get in touch with me. And I love it. I love hearing what people have to say. I love hearing what's on their minds. And if they have tips or they have questions, it just feeds my work, and I'm always happy to help. So that's how to do it.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I can't wait to share this podcast with the world. And as actually our mutual friend, Dr. Paul Roddy, said to me just this week in a phone conversation, he said, it's all going to start with connection before anything else. And that's what you're saying here. That's where it all starts, is making that connection.
Days where I wonder if my work is valuable, I realize it's everything. It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the beginning of everything. People that really struggle with connection, first of all, I will say, if you struggle with connection, we can fix that. You can learn things that can make it easier. It's not impossible. And we can all get better at it. Myself included, I keep learning every day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, for those of us who work kind of independently, and I'm sure there's a lot of us that do that, don't have a huge team around us or go to an office every day with lots of other people to interact with, sometimes we forget. And if you're a solopreneur and you're working by yourself, this is a really good way to be successful at building relationships. Don't get stuck behind the door. Get out, get some fresh air, meet some new people, expand your horizons, because in the long run, that 80-20 rule is going to pay off for you, and you're going to see great big dividends, and it's going to be a great thing. And not only that, they're going to be pleased they met you too. So
yeah, and it's about happiness too. I mean, if you want to be happy and live a long life, this is
absolutely.
part of the factor, is being connected, staying connected. Not just meeting new people all the time, but reaching back to someone you met. Go back 5 years, 10 years. There's always somebody whose relationship you can rekindle. A friendship where you're like, we have 10 years to catch up. Let's catch up on, let's have coffee.
Might take 2 coffees.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Patti. This has been awesome. I so appreciate it.
My pleasure. I love talking to you, and I love this whole concept. So, good luck, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me this week for part 2. I hope you've gained some helpful insights and techniques that will improve your networking. If you'd like to connect with Patti, you can reach her at intentionalnetworker.com or through her email at Patti, Patti, at intentionalnetworker.com. If you'd like to reach me, feel free to do so through simplythebestresults.com or email me at Cheryl, Cheryl, at simplythebestresults.com. We would both love to hear from you. So in the coming weeks, watch for our next shows, because they will be dropping soon, and I am sure that they'll be as powerful and meaningful and as helpful as this session was. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.